Thank you all so much. Thank you, Alita and Annie, for having me on today. I'm psyched to be here. My name is Caitlin Porter. I also didn't know exactly what hat to put on today for this presentation, so I'll put a couple of them on. I'm a value chain coordinator at the New Hampshire Food Alliance, which is based out of the University of New Hampshire. I also help coordinate the New England Food Hub and Processors Network. Um, and today I'm going to bring you through a quick little journey of Food Hub history. We're going to start a long time ago and very big picture, but I promise I'll rein it in and bring us back to Maine and try to make it all relevant. So just a quick little history lesson of the day, which I'm sure is nothing new to most or all of you. I found this visual really helpful as I started to reflect on, some questions that Annie and Alita were giving me about, paint a big picture of like, how do we get to where we are today of food hubs? Like, why did they come about and why now? So it really got me thinking, about the circumstances that have led to food hubs kind of being in this boom state that we're in right now. And to paint a picture of that, there was about 50 or so food hubs at the turn of the century. Um, and right now we're looking at 400 plus in the country alone. And that number continues to kind of waffle around 400 and increase incrementally. So why now and why has this food hub movement kind of exploded? And so this visual, as we all know, World War II brought advances in technology, agricultural chemical inputs, and a booming domestic economy. And I'm sure many other influences have led to this trend that we're seeing on the chart right now. Essentially, numbers of farms uh, significantly decreased while the average size of farms kind of exploded. So we still needed to be producing a similar amount of food, but we did that in fewer farms with larger equipment, essentially. And so the one little example I like to help paint a picture of really this free fall in the chart that we are looking at right around, 1940. Um, is what else did that mean? It meant that in the 1910s, 20s, and 30s, this country had infrastructure that was based around small and mid-scale agriculture. And this free fall essentially denotes the divestment from that infrastructure and the investment in large scale ag infrastructure. So we're at about 80 years into this experiment of abandoning infrastructure that was produced for a thriving, small to mid scale agriculture. And just a quick fact to paint that picture is there used to be over 15,000 grist mills in the Northeast alone. There used to be about 28,000 across the country, about half of which was in the Northeast. And today we're sitting around 20 remaining functional grist mills in the Northeast. Um, and the same goes with butchers and milkmen and all this infrastructure that used to exist for little ag. Um, and so what came out of this in the 70s and 80s and 90s, we start seeing the beginning of the food movement, the beginning of education about this swing to big ag and what that means. So during this time period, we start seeing the growth of a lot of food co-ops across the country. But really wasn't until the early 2000s where food hubs come onto the scene. And when I was looking around, Googling, researching, I kept coming across this number of 2007, 2008, 2009 was really the beginning of this explosion over the next decade that grew, these 400 plus food hubs across the country. And so I was trying to figure out, what contextually was happening in those specific years that led to that. And Alita, if you want to go to the next slide. One of the many reasons that I think helped influence that was education. documentaries were exploding, and the average consumer was starting to really learn at an accelerated pace about our food system and what was happening. We were starting to get Netflix, videos in our faces about the truths of what was happening, about how our food was being produced. These are just a very small handful of the documentaries. I'm sure a lot of you saw these. Super Size Me was shown in my high school health class. Um, and, Michael Pollan's books were being published and exploding in popularity. We had Forks Over Knives, Hungry for Change, What the Health, Fed Up. More and more documentaries were coming out over this decade. So I think culturally, we were all going through a really big shift, which increased this demand in knowing more about our food sources, knowing where our food was coming from, wanting that to be closer to home, and wanting those things to be done more sustainably and humanely. Um, so that is just to paint a picture of kind of what was going on culturally. Alongside that was also the explosion of organic. We see organic certification going through the roof between 2002 to 2015. Organic certifications across the country grew 250%. And I think a lot of those things were in parallel. Again, more education, there was more demand for food grown sustainably and locally. So we're currently now at around 400 food hubs. And what does that look like in Maine? And again, like, what are food hubs? So next slide, please. Food hubs have gone through a couple different definitions, the USDA. This is the more modern one. So the USDA is defining a food hub as a business or organization that actively manages the aggregation, distribution, and marketing of source identified food products, primarily from local and regional producers. And then they go on to add that their main goal is to strengthen the ability of small to mid-sized producers to satisfy wholesale, retail, and institutional demand. So again, food hubs are really coming in to satisfy and recreate and rebuild infrastructure that we abandoned 80 years ago, to come in and now help those small and mid-scale producers. And so in Maine, when I think of food hub, or sorry, we'll actually go to the next slide before diving into Maine. I like to show this slide because food hubs, I think after reading that definition, it can still leave a lot of questions up in there, and for good reason. The definition is really vague. And can mean a lot of things. It can be interpreted a lot of different ways. And that's the beauty of food hubs, right? The famous quote about food hubs is, when you've seen one food hub, you've seen one food hub. They're like snowflakes. And I think that's a beautiful thing, because a lot of the time they are formed because they are responding to a need of the community. They are really versatile. They've often listened to their farmers or their consumers to satisfy a need. So they take many different shapes and forms, and this slide is showing you just that. They are warehouses, that farmers drop off product from. And they're processing kitchens, they're retail markets, they're trucks on the road that we all drive by but don't think anything about, and they're online ordering platforms, things like that. So they're kind of this middle of the supply chain, unsexy part of the supply chain that we don't often think about, but they're providing a really, really critical need. So in Maine, when I think of food hubs, or entities that are satisfying this need of the middle of the supply chain, I'm thinking of Native Maine. Crown of Maine is doing a lot of that. Absolutely Peak Season and Daybreak, Maine Grains, a lot of folks that we're going to be hearing from on the panel today. North Atlantic Naturals, I know a little bit less about, but the more I hear about them, the more I know that they're fulfilling those needs as well. Fork Food Lab, while they focus on processing, and the old definition of food hubs used to include more about processing, they are absolutely providing that middle ground of creating an outlet for local foods. And then, of course, I just want to point out too that we just heard from Juliana, the local food switchboard, while they are not going to be solely responsible for the sales or the logistics, the local food switchboard in Maine is satisfying so much of that middle supply chain need, and kind of soft infrastructure to make those connections, you know, supporting the small to mid-scale ag in the state.
Hey,
A
Caitlin,
couple, yep,
just popping in to say, try to wrap it up within like a couple minutes.
sure, yep, just one more minute. You can go to the next slide. In New England, just so we see and get an idea of like how many food hubs exist and where are they. This is a map of the food hubs and processors that are participating in the New England Food Hub and Processors Network, which you can find more about online. And so there are about 40 or so on the screen and in New England that are currently identifying as such. And then maybe I'll leave it at that. I think I'll just leave with one statement. Annie had a great question about, how are food hubs coming together today to collaborate? And I'll just share that now that food hubs have become established so well over the last 2 decades or so, this kind of natural tier of food hub networks is now forming. Now that food hubs are so plentiful and starting to rub shoulders with each other, instead of competing, in a lot of ways, they're choosing to collaborate through forming networks where they're learning from each other, and they might even be creating efficiencies, with trading and creating more efficient trading routes, transportation routes, and things like that. So I'll leave just kind of a teaser about how food hubs are networking then. I'm happy to answer more questions about that later in the Q&A. I'll hand it back over to Alita.
Thanks so much, Caitlin. That was a great overview, and I loved the teasers for the folks who are about to speak too. Thinking about grist mills and Maine and things like that. So, I am excited to introduce our panelists today. We have Colleen Hanlon-Smith with Daybreak and Peak Season. We have Lottie Rosenkrantz from a Center for an Agricultural Economy and the Just Cut program and Farm Connects, all in Vermont, in Hardwick, Vermont. We have Kayla Carrier with Maine Grains and Chuck Larson with North Atlantic Naturals. So I'm just going to run through and cycle through these questions and give you all a chance to respond to them. But first, I'd love to just have you all introduce yourselves, briefly describe your food hub business, where it is, how it operates, and the needs or the gaps, kind of like what Caitlin was talking about, those community needs that led to the establishment of your operation. And why don't we let Colleen, you're next to me on my screen. Why don't you kick us off?
Thanks for that. Can you all hear me okay? Awesome. What a gorgeous day. I love that many of you are sitting outside. I'm doing the same. So I just wanted to make sure my service is coming through okay. My name is Colleen Hanlon-Smith, and I'm here with my peak season hat on, which is one piece of what I do. And then Daybreak Growers Alliance, I co-own, is the other piece of what I do. And I mentioned both because they operate as sister businesses that share warehousing and trucking, and serve as a central aggregation point that is currently in Unity, though expanding in Belfast, for over 100 Maine farmers and food producers. Daybreak focuses on direct to consumer through a customizable year-round farm share program where folks can pick out exactly what they want from those producers and have them delivered to about 25-30 locations throughout the state. Daybreak also has food access programming, and then peak season focuses on wholesale to a variety of different wholesale customers, with K through 12 schools being a primary focus in this year and the immediate years that we're growing into. And I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Colleen. Lottie, can you share next?
Sure. Hi, everyone. It's nice to see some familiar faces from Vermont in the greater area on here. So Lottie Rosenkrantz, she, her pronouns. I work at the Center for an Agricultural Economy in Hardwick, Vermont. That's Northeast Vermont. We are an organization that kind of touches many aspects of the food system. And we run a number of programs that support food access and farm viability and our working landscapes. And a couple of the programs, some of which you've heard about in the past, I think, are Just Cut. Just Cut is a line of ready-to-use produce that we make for the institutional market and prepared food kitchens. So we contract with farmers to set up good faith agreements and buy off produce throughout the course of the year and process that for our buyers. And then we run the Vermont Food Venture Center, which is rented commercial kitchen space, and Just Cut operates out of one of those commercial kitchens as kind of anchor tenants in the space. And then another business that we run is Farm Connects, which is a freight trucking company that offers logistics, transportation, and storage. And we work with over 80 farmers all across Vermont, hit about 400 stops per week, and move about nearly $13 million worth of product throughout the course of the year, or in 2025. That's how much we moved. And then our work also intersects, we do a lot around community organizing work, farm advising, and offer a revolving farm fund loan. I'll leave it there.
It's a lot. Thank
Yeah.
you, Lottie. So much going on at CIE. Chuck, you want to introduce yourself? Tell us about North Atlantic Naturals.
Sure. North Atlantic Naturals, based out of Cumberland, Maine. Just a few minutes out of Portland, right on Route 1. Our primary business is DSD distribution to about 800 retailers from Boston to Bar Harbor. Service Hannaford's, Market Baskets. The latest thing is they're in line with our mission. We're helping focus on small suppliers, helping them with logistics, storage, shared. We have 3,000 square feet of freezer space here and cold storage as well. And recently, as of March 1st, was awarded the RFSP, which is the Regional Food Systems Program, where suppliers get to come in, be warehouse, help logistics, pick up, shared storage, and connections with other distributors to help get their products out in the market. They're emerging. So that's North Atlantic.
Thanks, Chuck. Thanks for being here, and congrats on the RFSI grant. Kayla.
Yeah, my name is Kayla Carrier. I'm the Chief of Sales and Marketing at Maine Grains. We are the grist mill in downtown Skowhegan out of the former Somerset County Jail, which transformed into a grist mill back in 2012. So we're nearly 14 years old at this point. Our business, we're one of those 20 remaining grist mills here in the country, but we really exist to source regionally grown grain from about 40 different farmer partners, stone mill it in a traditional form to give you the freshest, most nutritious, and best performing flour really on the market. I don't know how many people know this, but Maine is formerly the breadbasket of New England. So in the early 1800s, we were growing about 239,000 bushels of wheat annually, which was enough to feed about 100,000 families. And the last remaining grist mill here in Skowhegan at least closed in the 1950s as train tracks that ran through the center part of town were ripped out, and much of the grain production in this country moved westward in favor of better yields and the ability to sell on a commodity market. And so we really exist to bring grain production back here to the state of Maine, to provide other cash crops for farmers who are growing things like potatoes or blueberries or broccoli in years when they need to rotate their fields. And we also provide market opportunities for dairy farmers here that either lost their dairy contracts or were looking to diversify their farms as well. So we process and mill about 2.5 million pounds of grain a year, distribute our product through about 10 different local distributors, and are regionally distributed as far south as Northern Virginia at this point.
Awesome. Thank you, Kayla. All right. I am keeping an eye on the time here, and we did it again. We tried to do too much in a short amount of time, so I'm going to go ahead and combine a couple questions here. I want to know, if you haven't touched on it yet, what types of producers tend to thrive in your food hub model, and then while you're answering that one, also we'd love to hear about some of the biggest logistical challenges that you face, whether that's transportation, storage, aggregation, staffing. So what are those challenges and what kind of investments would make the biggest difference in your operation? And let's switch it up. Let's go in reverse. Kayla, you want to tell us a little bit about you touched on this a little bit, but the farmers that tend to do well in your food hub and challenges you face.
Yeah, absolutely. When we started our business, the one of the biggest hurdles was infrastructure, both on farms and infrastructure to clean and mill grain here in the state of Maine. And so, really, our business was grown out of the Maine Grain Alliance, the establishment of the Maine Grain Alliance in 2007, which is the nonprofit that brought together millers, researchers, anyone really invested in what we call like reviving the grain economy here in the state of Maine. And so at the first initial meetings of that nonprofit, two pinch points were really identified here in the state of Maine. So a lack of infrastructure on farms to both harvest grain, so no one was investing in combines anymore. They were really expensive pieces of equipment, and a lack of infrastructure to store grain on farms, so thinking silos and things of that nature. And then on the flip side, there was a lack of infrastructure here in the state with many of the grist mills closing down that were cleaning and milling grain into food grade product. And so the latter was what our founder and CEO, Amber Lamke, thought that she could address with a business plan to start a mill. I could go into the deep stories of how that came to be, but really, like I said, we serve to source grain from local and regional farmers, small to mid scale, who meet our standards. So we prioritize organic. We prioritize heritage grains as well. So the revival of old heritage grains like spelt, einkorn, kamut, things like that. And the second part of your question was about what are our current needs. So, we're a business that's about 70%, 75% wholesale. So bulk bags to bakeries, restaurants, institutions, etc. And about 20 to 25% retail. So to grocery and natural food stores and co-ops. And we're really looking to both grow both sides of that, but also find reliable, consistent distribution through our food hubs and traditional distributors. And so that aggregation and logistics is always a consideration. And we're looking to build those relationships through, strong communication and knowledge sharing and whatnot. I'll leave it there.
So, yeah, I remember you saying that it's difficult as like a mid-sized business. There's like the infrastructure that really supports those small scale and then the large scale, but you've had some issues with finding the right fit for you at the scale that you're at.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, if we're going in reverse, Chuck, would love to hear about the types of producers that tend to thrive in your business model and some of the challenges that you face.
Yeah, we like to say that we're before this awarding of this grant, we're a DSD operating distributor, full service. The people that come in through our door are usually someone who's been selling out of the trunk of their car, 30 accounts, and then all of a sudden, boom, something happened. They got into market basket. They need to scale up. They need storage. They need a better production facility. Those are the people who usually come to us, and then we kind of take them to the next level. As far as the food hub part here and where we're focusing on, we've always believed that brands are built on independent retailers. As much as people get excited about Market Basket and Hannaford, it's going to your favorite brewery, having a bag of Fox chips, think it's the best thing with your beer, and then realize that you can buy it everywhere else. And that's kind of where we've kind of found our niche in helping brands. Ones that will be coming in through our new program, you know, one, they don't have to fit into our DSD model. We have partner distributors throughout the whole Northeast that we work with in different channels of business. But, we'll be able to logistically pick up their product from their facility, store it here, help them with anything from storage logistics. And the grant fortunately pays, almost 75% of the cost now, which is fantastic. It does scale down over a few years. So those are the ones that usually fit ours. What's great about us, we're not your what they call like a 3PL kind of thing, which would be more like your Amazon thought, is that we're hands-on. We meet with each supplier to get what their needs are, figure out how best to help them be successful. And that's right in line with our mission as a company to help small suppliers get distribution, get market share, and expand throughout Maine and into the rest of New England. Biggest challenges for us on this side is I mean, sitting right here on my desk is a $4,800 bill from the freezer. We have 3,000 square feet of freezer space. Costs $7,200 a month to run that freezer system, right? So small suppliers usually coming in do not understand those costs that come along with that. You add logistics, pickup costs, $30 an hour for a driver, gas now, what, $6-7 for diesel, 11, 15 miles a gallon, do the math, right? So those are our costs incurred with supplying distribution, pickup, and logistics. And I think that's usually not factored in with most suppliers when they're planning to go to the next level and preparing for additional costs. Fortunately, with this program, a lot of those 75% of those costs are reduced, which will really help the system. For us now, as it just came evident for us, is just kind of getting the word out, reaching out to suppliers, meeting with them, figuring out what their needs are. And what's great about working with us too is, we have people here at 1 a.m. to 7 o'clock at night. And so it's not, you can come and pick up 10 cases, 5 cases, drop off 10 cases. We're really fitting that need in the food systems and food hub business or the model where you can't, all the Maricolds and the large freezer capacities, you can't do those kind of things and work so closely and have someone you can call up and be down here in 5 minutes, So yeah, I think that's pretty much it there. So
Yeah, that's great to hear that you're keeping it really flexible for the folks that you're working with. And it's sounds like expensive work, but hugely helped by these grant opportunities like our FSI. Lottie, who thrives in your operation? And feel free to speak to any of the many arms of CAE.
Sure. I know I was having a hard time thinking about how to focus this question in. Yeah, we support many types of producers. In terms of Just Cut, we work with many farmers that are looking for wholesale markets, essentially for their produce. We're buying large quantities of produce. We're sometimes from them. We're setting up terms with them, price points, sizing, etc. In addition, there may be farmers within that group that are looking for farm advising or further technical assistance, and that's something that we offer here at CAE. In terms of our trucking arm, our freight trucking arm, we're working very closely with small to mid-scale producers and those that are interested in direct sales to buyers, to retail locations or institutional locations, or also producers that are not able to access traditional distributors or maybe looking for a combination of both. We just Farm Connects moves a lot of product to farm stands and small general stores and and other producers that are looking to source local products that some traditional distributors don't service. And then in terms of the Vermont Food Venture Center, often that's producers that are looking to scale up their business and work in a commercial kitchen space. So rent commercial kitchen space and use industrial kind of semi-automated machinery to create their products. So yeah, scaling up for that type of producer, and also those looking for technical assistance or business planning support. And in terms of the biggest logistical challenges, I'm going to really speak most closely to specifically to Just Cut, and that's infrastructure, well, equipment, I'll say. Right now, we're in the midst of moving our entire kitchen from a 550 square foot space to about 850 square feet. And we're looking at equipment improvements to increase efficiency and the ergonomics. The current way Just Cut processes is there's a fair amount of manual steps involved in it, as well as a lot of machinery that we use, but we're really ready to advance in some of those equipment pieces that we're working with because of the wear and tear that exists on our staff and the physicality of the current job. And then I'll just say also cost of trucking is like Chuck was talking about, is just huge with the rising costs of everything right now. And so that's a big challenge that we're experiencing. And I can leave that there.
Thank you, Lottie. Yeah, I think it just circles back to what Annie was saying about the switchboard and how that came to be, is like people, if we can share equipment or like figure out how to make the most of our equipment, it goes a long way. All right, Colleen, let's hear from you. Who works best with your operation, and what are some of the challenges you face?
Great. Yeah. So we really started, and I'll sort of pick up on a question I didn't answer in the first one, and dovetail it in, but with small scale, largely organic producers at Daybreak, which served as our core group of farms we were aggregating from, in an effort to really create a more robust and versatile offering direct to consumer that could compete, as we saw CSA shares level off and farms' appetite for managing those types of relationships decreased. The wholesale used to be underneath Daybreak and has spun off to its own. And I would say like we are still honing in on our sourcing priorities, with certified organic or regenerative grown being a priority on fresh product, but also recognizing that with many of the challenges that other presenters have brought forward on the distributor side, like the rising costs of distribution or the storage and aggregation of product, and also on the farmer side, there's both been increasing challenges, I'd say more than ever, that we aren't immune from as a distributor, and also increased knowledge and growth of farms over the years, which has translated to a higher level of specialization of crops. So, that looks more like whether it's mixed greens and carrots versus like, green beans that everyone might love or want, but translates to labor costs. We're looking at both how do we hone in on those crops that are truly viable for Maine farmers that are have carved a niche in the wholesale marketplace, as well as how do we support those businesses that are making value-added, minimally processed foods that are a better fit for many of our larger wholesale markets and institutional markets. And so, I'd say like the challenges are the same as they've always been, which is just always being prepared for a high level of adaptability to serve the need of both the supplier base as well as the customer base. And it's both exciting and challenging, and it's never boring.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. You all, as middle of the supply chain folks, have to think about the ripple effects in both directions so far, to think about crop planning with your producers to meet demand, but also like what is labor intensive. You hold a lot. So we appreciate that. I am noticing that we are over time. Is that right, Annie?
No,
I
we're
got,
good.
I got
got-
lost.
We got 15 minutes for the panel.
Oh, I had in my mind 12 o'clock. That's so great.
Yeah.
Well, we can go deep then.
Yeah.
I want to hear from you all about what is something that you wish more people understood about the complexity of operating a food hub, like on the day-to-day. And we can start, I'll mix it up to this time. Let's start with Lottie. What's something you wish people understood about the complexity?
Yeah, good question. Well, I think Caitlin mentioned this earlier, and I think we all know this, that like no two food hubs are alike. And I think there's a number of food hubs within Vermont and, in greater New England. We all operate so differently and offer a slew of different services really based on our local economy and the needs of kind of our greater area. CAE is unique in that we offer processing and commercial kitchen space, and we offer this freight, trucking arm, and some of the services that are not offered by other food hubs within this state. I can't speak to others as eloquently, but I think we complement each other really nicely within our state, and that is great. And I think that our work intersects very consistently, I'll say, with all of the food hubs within the state. We are constantly delivering product to those food hubs, picking up product from other food hubs. So there's a lot of intersection between our work, and I think just overall, just that we're all offering kind of unique services based on the needs that are needed within our community. And I think CAE has evolved quite a bit. We never thought we'd have trucks on the road, 6 years ago or 7 years ago. And 6 years ago, we bought a trucking company because it was looking to sunset. And we felt like it was really important that the producers within our state that were being serviced by that company continue to have access to that type of trucking. We have so many farms down like long dirt roads within Vermont, and many producers that want to hold that relationship. And so we felt it was really important to hold that, to keep that going. There's all sorts of things that like we thought we'd never do and we do now. And it's just because we've evolved with kind of the needs of our community, and kind of greater Vermont community.
Yeah, I feel like you guys in Vermont do this incredible job of like truly meeting the needs of your community, like coordinating the food hubs, how they work together so that you are not necessarily in competition, but each finding your niche and making it work so that you all benefit and the folks who are consuming your food benefit as well. But it's complicated, doing that coordination is not simple. Colleen, what about you? What do you wish people understood about the complexity of day-to-day operations on the ground with Peak?
Yeah, it's tricky because I feel this audience probably does understand. And so I would say like if it was a less informed or an audience that was sort of just coming into the work, I thought about this before. You guys were so kind to send these questions around before. It's kind of like there's a lot, and it's also pretty self-explanatory in many other ways in terms of what we do is we aggregate and we market and we distribute the product, and there's a lot of complexities or unforeseens that can come up within that. I think on the consumer side of the equation, questions around the pricing of groceries always come up. And I feel like we're always trying to, getting back to one of the larger challenges, trying to pay a viable price point to the producer while remaining competitive on the other side of it. And what that means in terms of tight margins or where we have to focus. I think when it comes to collaboration, I agree that the food hubs within the Northeast are at a point of really witnessing and excited about the different synergies that are happening amongst food hubs. And we definitely want to partake in those. And we also sort of have a roadmap of things we have to do in order to be here in the immediate upcoming years and be well set up to be a good partner to others that we'd love to be partnering with. And so sometimes that looks like we can't be at certain events or can't partner in certain ways, and it's not a lack of interest, but really just that we have sort of a roadmap and operations right in front of us that we have to hit in order to be able to really set ourselves up with a foundation that's going to keep us strong moving forward. So a lot of times that means our primary focus on the day to day is being available to our producer suppliers and our customers, and maybe the trucking companies in between, or those that are directly involved in partnerships with us, recognizing that we can't exist outside of this beautiful ecosystem that is the larger food community, but we also have sort of only so many hours in the day and a really real perishable product that has to get from A to B to C within a finite timeline. And so that personally can be tricky for me sometimes. There's so many more ways that I wish that I could be involved in different activities going on in the food system. And a lot of times those of us in sort of the background operations are doing that day in and out. And so both love it, and also it means we miss out sometimes on the greater collaborative opportunities, or we're just not at a point of growth yet to fully realize those and step into them. So excited to keep striving towards that.
Yeah, you guys are experiencing such exciting, tremendous growth right now. And I'm only heartened to hear that you are going about that in such a thoughtful and intentional way and making sure that your base is steady before you kind of branch out. So thanks, Colleen. Chuck, how about you? What's something that you wish people understood better about the complexity of your day-to-day work?
I think after just kind of listening to everybody too, is that and we're trying to fix obviously the disconnects within the systems, like food hub, all these food hubs all being different, right? Some, like in my case, we have our own trucks, we have our own distribution, we have our own accounts. Some hubs don't have any of those things, right? Some pick up, some don't. Some are for profit, some are nonprofit. Those are different ways of looking at it. I think the other thing too to always remember is the fact that we just talk about food. Okay, it's a food hub, but on my side of things, there's a big difference between the disconnect of what a produce distributor is to a packaged good distributor to someone who sells toilet paper or food or health and beauty. Beverage can be a completely different distributor than food. In non-alc beverage is a different distributor than a liquor distributor or a beer distributor, and they're all different channels of business. And all of them have different margin requirements, and it changes from at the retail level to a wholesaler too. So I think the biggest complexity of it is that it's one thing to be in a food hub and say food, but understanding too that depending on what's walking in through the door, like there's snack distributor, but that snack distributor would be very terrible at selling your beverage product or whatever it is. And I guess as food hubs, understanding that complexity and having a network to kind of work within to understand that, just because North Atlantic Naturals is good at this doesn't mean that they're going to, be good at. Like one thing we're not good at as a distributor is the wholesale side of the business. We don't really do restaurants. Yet we have partners that do very well in the restaurant business. So we can connect them to those things. So I know it's not exactly answering your question on this, but I think that the complexity of it, understanding just we always just say food, but once it gets here, where it goes from here can be very specific to the channel.
Yeah, no, I think that definitely gets at the question of what people don't grasp about the complexity of a food hub is different channels mean different, or different items mean different channels, and that means a whole different set of rules and regs and how to transport food. So, yeah, thanks for lifting that up, Chuck. I think that's really critical. Kayla, how about you?
Yeah, I think what we're all trying to get at is we're so highly specialized, and our position in the middle of the supply chain is such that we rely on, producers before us, producing the product and getting it to us in a timely fashion. And then, within our own facility, there's complexities that are hard to describe in some cases. Like, in our case, everything we do is freshly milled to order. So that brings complexity to logistics. When do we receive POs? When are production schedules printed for the team? When does our production team see that PO? So that may be a whole day later than when you send it in to us. That's, that brings in the complexity of lead times. We need time from the time of the PO is received to mill the product fresh to get it to you, who's going to get it to the end use customer. There's so many complexities in that process. And so I think it comes back to, my first point about a continued challenge is communication. If my team's not regularly meeting with Colleen's team over at peak season to understand like what their logistical needs are and whatnot, we're not going to be doing a good job servicing our customers in the long run. So there's complexities along the supply chain, and we're stuck there in the middle, managing them all. But
Yeah. Like I said, you have to understand so much about what's going on outside of your operation to make it function. Great. Okay. I want to do one more sort of like closing question with you all and then open it up for some brief Q&A from our participants here. So my last question for you all is how do you see the role of food hubs evolving across Maine and the broader region? What's needed to support this evolution? So you could interpret that as like, what do you want to see, or what are you seeing? And Chuck, I don't think I picked on you first.
Why not? I think Kayla touched on it too, is that the just before this we had our meeting on our about our grant, and it was just saying that it was so important to have a sit down meeting with that supplier that's coming in to discuss all of their needs, exactly, because it's customizable to every single one of them, and understanding how it's one thing. It's like, as a distributor, I have suppliers come and reach out to me every single week that want me to distribute their product. And yet my concern is getting it out of my building into retail, into the right places so it's successful. And I think that that's one piece that I think that food hubs can work on collaborating better together, is understanding like when someone comes into your hub, helping them get it out into the market to be the most successful. And I think this education that comes with that, it may not be part of their business model as general, but it's the most crucial part, is how do I get you out there so people are consuming your product and it's being useful. And I think for us, there's certain channels of food that we're not good at that we want to get better at. Now that we're taking on this project, we don't like to do a lot of talking. We like to do a lot of action. So it's like, come up with a plan and go out and execute this thing, right? So I think that's probably yeah. See, that was the first one on deck. That's my thoughts on it.
Thanks, Chuck. Yeah, I'm hearing like being real about what your specialty is and directing people to other hubs or other businesses if what they're looking for is not necessarily what you have to offer.
Yeah, if we have something that's doing well for us, making sure we're sharing that with other hubs.
Yeah.
If they're going to other places, say, hey, this is where it's working for us, or this is what their needs are. How can you help them?
Yeah.
So I'm coming in with the time checked for like 1 minute shares because now we do have to wrap it up later.
Okay. Thanks, Annie. Thanks for keeping us to it. All right. Kayla, what you got?
Yeah, we're small teams with employees that wear many hats, and so one thing I'd love to see more of, and I'll come back to this communication standpoint, but like knowledge sharing, data sharing, what's working, what's not. That is so useful. There'll always be a need for continued investment in infrastructure and aggregation and storage and all that. But we can only learn as much on our own, and we're stronger together. So partnership all the way.
Thank you, Kayla. Colleen?
I'd echo what Chuck and Kayla said and add on that I think that despite the unique attributes of each food hub, that within aggregation and trucking, there are some standard services that as the rest of the world consolidates and creates it more competition for us to face, that there may be ways of sort of aligning service offerings that ensure viability for us while increasing transparency for producers, with very much an eye towards like these years are going to be really difficult for farmers with both state and federal funding drying up and a confluence of issues. And so how can we sort of make what we're doing more accessible, learn about what each other's doing, find the commonalities, and make it more accessible to the suppliers that are out there.
Yeah, good stuff. Good time to lean on each other. Lottie, what do you see?
Yeah, I think everyone brought up really great points so far in terms of wrapping this up. Yeah, I think that we're all offering very unique services, and so yeah, partnership I think is very important in terms of leveraging each other's kind of specialties in terms of what we're offering. I think just a greater understanding of the services of our food hub versus the other food hub is going to help us all thrive in our current food economy. And I mean, at the bottom line is that like we really need consumer and buyer kind of investment in our local food system for all of us to thrive. Yeah, very evolving economy right now, and I think values are something that we're hoping that folks hold on to as we move forward, despite rising costs of everything.
Yeah, heard. And I think that takes a significant amount of education of like, here's why it's critical to invest in this work right now, especially. All right. Shall we open it up? We've got 7 minutes and would love to hear from you all. So maybe Annie, sorry, we can unpin ourselves here and rejoin as a large group. And if you have a question for our panelists, you can raise a virtual hand or just stick your hand up and we will call on you.
Including if any questions came up in your little breakout groups, right? Or thoughts that you want to share.
Steve Knight, what you got?
I'm just curious, is there a move at all to standardize a food hub? Or do you
What an
just
awesome question.
the food hub? I mean, are food hubs moving towards towards a model of, well, these are the 5 things everybody can give, and then we're specific because of our area and our farms and our trucks and all that. We have to specialize in something.
So we heard that when you've seen one food hub, you've seen one food hub, and Steve's question is about like, why is that? Or is there any move to kind of make a replicable model?
I would say, I mean, just the kind of the classic yes and no answer to that one. No, in the way that I think food hubs are unique and will continue to be unique because they respond so well to a small scale community need. But I do think what we're seeing from these food hub networks is the desire to, okay, let's not reinvent the wheel. There is a certain level of redundancy that can be cut down, like standard operating procedures that every food hub has to write out, about their cleaning processes and things like that. Like, let's just create a Google Drive where we can put it up there and then people can give and take the language. And that is just one tiny example of the ways that food hubs are coming to collaborate to create those kind of micro efficiencies and say, hey, who's your USDA contact? Because I've spent the last 4 days contacting people and I can't get through to them. That's another way that, just the more food hubs I think work together and can learn from each other, they do create those efficiencies that I do think add up over time. Learning about, troubleshooting through each other's software platforms, asking each other questions that can really catalyze their learnings. So yeah, no, I think no big movement to standardize in kind of these big ways, but learning from each other, I think is certainly kind of helping fill that need.
You see,
Go,
Chip.
yeah.
I was just going to touch on that too. I mean, standardizing. I mean, we are in I call it a simple business. Sometimes it is, food being made, moved here into a retail. So in some capacities, you are standardized. We're all doing kind of the same thing, just a little bit different, and to touch on, I mean, depending on what we are moving, that can't be standardized because if you're moving beverage, if you're moving snacks, if you're moving produce, or you're moving meat, there's all sorts of different things you have to be looked at. So again, we're unicorns in it, but we all kind of doing the same thing. But certainly can learn a lot from each other, though.
Looks like we have another question in the chat from Leslie about selling to schools. And I think, Colleen, you're probably best positioned to respond to this question if you're able to see it. Can you see it on your phone? Okay.
Sorry, I'm here. Yeah, we are working with I want to say it's almost 60 K through 12 schools, various frequency throughout the state of Maine, 13 of 16 counties. I'm kind of astounded by it. It definitely took like anywhere from a 1 month to 12-month sales process of letting them know that we're here, and definitely already had a ready-made model of um, sort of a food service ready list of main products that also the majority of which, almost all, are eligible for the local food fund, state funding that incentivizes those purchases. So can't say that we did it on our own by any means whatsoever, but have been trying to crack this nut for years now in Maine. And I think there's been this beautiful confluence of advocacy, nonprofit support, education, and resources, as well as for-profit entities and distributors like ourselves that have figured out ways to streamline access to schools. And so that's been huge bright spot over these past years, is that it's working and it's exciting. And I would say the biggest kudos would be to the school nutrition teams who really are putting in the extra mile to make it happen and figure out how to incorporate another vendor and how to incorporate other products and seasonal eating into their recipes for kids. And it's pretty sweet to see, to be honest. It's pretty cool. So thanks for asking the question.
Yeah, and I love getting this question because I get to point people towards peak season. It's such an easy, like, you want to bring more local food into your cafeteria? Here's a food hub distributor who does exactly that. Yeah. Any other questions for this group?
We only have about a minute to go, so
Maybe we just
Yeah. Probably. If anybody has any burning questions, feel free to email me or Alita, or if you have a panelist contact, contact them directly. Hi, Sam's kiddos. Look at you guys. How fun. All right. Well, we hope everybody has a great day. In the chat is reminders if you want to register for the June webinar there, and help us keep going with little donations for future processing work group actions and educational resource sharing opportunities. And thanks everybody for joining us. What a great group, and especially to our panelists. Thank you so much for putting in the effort to prepare and to be here. Take care, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye. Nice to see you all.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye. Bye, Brianna.
So sweet.
Nice. Oh my God. I don't know why I thought it. Oh, let me stop recording here. I always do that.
People in